Pitchfork named the album the 47th best shoegaze album of all time. Are there 47 shoegaze albums? There probably are now, but yeah. Um,
Hey, everybody out there. Welcome back to another episode of the Audiophiles. It's Andy, it's John, and it is, as always, when we get together, time to discuss some music. John's going to offer up a track, an artist for me to go off and listen to. I'm going to do just that, and then we're going to come back and discuss it in detail, as we are wont to do. John, what is on the docket today, my friend?
so the band is called The Telescopes,
Okay.
and the track is called The Perfect Needle.
Mm, all right.
Big
That's an
embroidery fans.
Yeah, I was gonna say, are we talking about records? Are we talking about narcotics? Are we talking about tattoos? Are we talking about vaccination? It could be a myriad things. Okay. I will endeavor to check this thing out and come back and let you know my findings. I love this idea of like this sort of dense, drony kind of guitar stuff and a fiddle being used. I wasn't expecting to hear that, and I didn't have to wait long for it because it's pretty much how it started right out of the gate. So that's an interesting, unexpected sound that I didn't know I would like until I heard it. Okay, so I think we just got what was the first chorus there, as the titular line was uh, part of the greater lyrics of the chorus. But preceding that was the verse, or verses. I'm not really sure how many that was. Depends on how long or short the stanzas are for each of them. Regardless of that, um, I did not like the his approach in the verse. Um, there's a thick amount of sound, a lot, and there are songs out there that I enjoy that feature that. That's fine, but if that's going to be the musical approach, then please, for the sake of clarity and I guess just adding something to the mix, do something with your voice. It just gets lost and it's monotone and without character, and it just feels like an afterthought to me, and it's just muddy. But in the chorus, to his credit, he has this snarl to him and this character in his voice. And he's saying really interesting shit. Like, what are you talking about? You've got the perfect needle. I mean, I assume it's dope and, some narcotic or whatever, but I've got the perfect, like, elixir or, remedy, cure, vaccine for you. So it's good that that part has clarity, and that I, the listener, can, like, marinate on what that might mean. But if the verses are going to help me connect the dots from a lyrical standpoint to get to what that might mean, you know, they're indiscernible. I can't understand what he's saying, so I'm getting no real assist from their existence, the verses from a lyrical standpoint. But I'll get off my soapbox and we will press on. I like this a lot. Shots of this part too. Yeah, there were. It's a tale of parts with this one, and my enjoyment thereof, or lack of enjoyment in one particular area. I've already opined on that. You know, the verses just ain't for me. Musically, they're pretty cool. And the fiddle work, I mean, God, at times the bow on strings took on this. It was so full, it sounded like a swarm of locusts or something like that. That's how much buzz was in the air from that sort of friction that's created when one drags a bow across strings. But that verse and his delivery really kind of just, you know, leave me wanting more. I'm sure they don't give a shit about my opinion, and that's fine, but that's why we do the channel. I want to be honest with John and you guys who may care about, you know, my experience giving the song a go. Now, all that out of the way, the chorus was really great. I love the snarl. I love this discovered attitude that he, you know, employs in the delivery of those lyrics. I love the way that even though a lot of the lines in the chorus are like repeated twice, I love that they're still evocative, regardless of, you know, how scant they are from a total word count. There's enough said that makes you go like, is this, you know, malignant or benign, this needle that you're suggesting? And I'm inclined to think it's, you know, probably malignant, given rock and roll and its tendencies and its participants who have this proclivity to the use of narcotics. But there's also this part after that, after the chorus, where it grows and grows, this sound, and becomes like climactic. And I really, really like that. It might be my favorite part of the song. It's just a shame that what follows it is these verses where the lyrics are, you know, you can't pick them up. You know, maybe I should just look at this as if it were an instrumental in the verses and just enjoy the, you know, drony guitars and that interesting buzzing fiddle that's going on there, and kind of that loose snare work that's happening, because it's all, that bit sounds great. I have one issue. I just, you know, it seems to be a glaring one for me. So yeah, I grappled with bits of it, but there was plenty of it that I could enjoy, and I'm glad I gave this a listen. I'd be interested to learn more about the telescopes and kind of like the genre designation. I've used drone a couple times, and it kind of has that quality to it. Now, I wonder if this is so early in the evolutionary process of these one of these little subgenres that it hasn't quite fully formed yet. You know what I mean? And while it might not sound like the perfect finished product, it's pretty hard to ignore that like this was integral to the process and therefore deserves the reverence and the discussion and the listen and all of those things, which is why we're here and why we do this. And I also just want to cap this off by saying, like, though I took issue with a particular part of this song, it doesn't mean I don't like the song. It's probably like on a scale of like a 6.8 or a 7. Um, the only thing I think it's worth bringing up is, like, in my own opinion, if you made one minor adjustment, that might shoot that up to like a 7.8 to an 8.5 or something like that, And that's just my 2 cents worth. You can take it or leave it, likely leave it. But all in all, I did enjoy the track. It raised some questions in me, both from a critique standpoint, but also from like I'm interested to learn standpoint. And when I'm interested to learn about a song that I've been given by John, the number one thing you want to do is rush back to him and figure out what the hell the missing pieces are. And I'm sure he has them. So let's get back to the man himself.
Everyone's a fruit and nut case. He's back. So you've had to listen to The Perfect Needle by The Telescopes. Why don't you give us your opinion?
Well, if you really want it, I will. I suppose that's what we're here for. Bit of a mixed bag, this one. Um, it's almost like a tale of two different parts, maybe three if you want to count that bit of music after each chorus before the verses jump off again. Yeah, I'll get into that. So at the onset of the song, I catch some resonant fiddle action that is soon accompanied by and almost drowned out by some thickly distorted guitar. I mean, this is like robust. Now, I say nearly because despite the robust presence of that guitar, the strings can still be heard through it all. Um, and as if I come into focus more, which is hard to do because it's all the sound. I'm realizing that those two are coexisting fairly well together, especially when you hold them up against the third component that kind of makes its way in there, which is the vocals. And I'm also picking up some loose snare and hi-hat work in the mix as well, but I'm not really fond of how the drums are mixed in the verse. They sort of get lost or drowned out a bit, but not even to the extent that the vocals do. Like they really get lost. And it's like all the strings, whether they're these orchestral instruments or the rock and roll guitar, all seem to be pulling the oxygen out of the room, leaving little room to discern specific lyrics. You know that there's someone singing, but even the singing is done in this kind of monotone, drowsy sort of fashion. And it gives off this feeling that the singer lacks conviction or that he isn't buying into what he's professing, whatever that is. I still don't know any of the lyrics to the verse in this at all. However, and to his credit, in this next stanza, which turns out to be the chorus, I would imagine, as it sort of resolves on the repeated allusion to the titular line, the perfect needle. He has like he adds edge to his vocals, and this gives it's almost like they come up a bit so I can hear them more. And he gives it personality that it kind of lacked in the that he lacked in the verse. And he leans into that repeated phrase that contains the titular line I mentioned a moment ago. I've got the perfect needle. Um, and I must say that the song is incredibly dense in sound, not just a wall of sound, but rather a rampart of sound. And it makes combing through the layers, especially in one listen, quite the tall order. Um, the strings are so full at times that the friction of the bow work begins to sound like a swarm of locusts in the mix. with this like almost inherent buzzing sound fully on display and turned up to 11. Now, after the chorus, this shines for a bit before he comes back in. And in this moment, I appreciate it. I like how big and monstrous the sound is. But then it undercuts whatever he's trying to say in the following verse. And it was the same story in that first verse. So this vocal delivery thing is not a bug, it's a feature, particularly in the verses. The fullness of the music and the subdued or lazy style of delivery doesn't make for an easy listen from a discernibility perspective. Um, and to be honest, his delivery of the verses seem like perfunctory, like and without conviction or soul. However, I know very little of the song, so perhaps this style or affectation that he's employing is part of a bigger picture meant to illustrate the mood of the lyrical content, which, to be fair, I'm catching next to none of. So I'm taking into consideration that this might be a me thing, or I'm lacking context that would better illuminate or educate an opinion, or at least a good opinion of this these decisions, some of these decisions made throughout the song. But of course, the chorus again follows the verse, and again, I'm enjoying this approach much, much more. Um, this time, I catch even more of the chorus as he sings, and it hurts too much to be where you are. Hurts too much to be where you are. I've got the perfect needle. I've got the perfect needle for you. There's obviously an allusion to administering some sort of intravenous remedy to what ails the individual to whom the lyrics are aimed. The question remains, though, is this malignant, like a narcotic fix, or more benign, like a vaccine or cure? Um, or am I completely off in both of those and it has some other meaning, as we sort of joked about before I went off and gave this thing a go? Um, Even though the timestamp here suggests there's only a little over 10 seconds left in the song, um, the instead of the song deflating or fading or tipping its cap or showing its hand that things are about to resolve and come to an end. It swells. It's that sort of same thing that they did earlier after the chorus where it gets bigger. And I liked that, even though I mean all signs, timestamps, spoiler alert. I knew it was coming to an end. I like how they brought it up before they hit that final kind of like resonant note, and you hear the scratch of the bow on the strings, and it comes to that sort of semi-resonant conclusion. So yeah, to be fair, I grappled with bits of this song, and I will likely have to give it another go, equipped with whatever contextual information you might provide. The verses struck me as a bit messy and too muddled with all the sound. Oddly, though, I do like I mean, this to me sounded like drone rock, especially in the verses, how they just like this sound just kind of droned and persisted as it went through. And God knows I love a bit of that. This to me seemed like maybe the early stages of that before that sound had been perfected, if you want to use that term. So yeah, that kind of affected my opinion of the track. I did really like the energy of the choruses though, and I feel like this had the makings of something that could have been better if it had continued to be fleshed out and improved. But what I mean, who am I to critique? You know what I mean? When this song came out, I was probably a little kid who knew nothing of this, and to this day, I'm sure these guys know more about what they wanted to do, of course, than I should lend any critique of. It's just my humble opinion. I did really find the title and the bits of lyrics that I did catch to be interesting, and I'm intrigued to hear what lyrics I missed to perhaps educate an overall meaning of what was being conveyed. So you're going to have to tell me more, and hopefully when you do, I can look at this song in a different light on a subsequent listen and give it its due. So tell me a bit more, John.
Okay, that's really interesting. I thought perhaps that's what you might say. And this is more of an illustration of what I've been saying before. Um, the difference in terminology and approach. This is early shoegaze with a bit of drone in it. This is what shoegaze should sound like, as defined by the movement when it first started. That thick texture. Shoegaze is really about texture, and it has to be, as much distortion and as much guitar effects as you can handle, filling out the space. And then you have weak, ethereal vocals where you cannot discern the lyrics over the top. And that's what it's all about. And this is
Mm.
really early. This is what it's the quintessential blueprint of early shoegaze before it got watered down and dream pops and all that sort of stuff. This is when you go in and see them live, you just get huge waves of noise, and you know the guy's singing, but you haven't got a fucking clue. And yeah, so I love it for that. But that's again, it's because it's of that, and it's early. And interestingly, no, I'll get into it in a bit. Okay, so just get into it and you get some context here because this isn't a complete love-in either. There's bits of this that I can't stand as well, but I'll get into that. So the Telescopes, really interesting band. They're English, surprise. They're formed in 1987 in Burton-on-Trent by the artist, composer, and musician Stephen Laurie, with band members David Fitzgerald and Joanna Doran joining later. The band's lineup is in constant flux, it says here. There can be anywhere between 1 and 20 members on a recording, and God knows how many he's had in his time. Um, their genre labels: alternative rock, noise rock, psychedelic rock, shoegaze, space rock, ambient, avant-garde, dream pop, down tempo, drone,
Mm.
electro pop, electronica, ethereal, experimental, folk, free jazz, improvisation, neo psychedelia, jazz, indie, and new gaze. Obviously, not all in this one track.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. How could it be shoegaze and new gaze all at once? So yeah, I was gonna
But
say.
if you think they're still going to this day, so you
Yeah,
imagine they've
of course,
evolved.
right? Yeah.
And interesting. So they have influenced actual movements, the shoegaze movement for a start, space rock as well, and the psychedelic movement, and in particular artists such as Black Rebel Motorcycle Club, Revolver, Francis Bean Cobain, Portishead, Mogwai, Radiohead, and probably really the obvious is Brian Jonestown Massacre.
Mm.
And there's kind of similarities between the two because they both had this mercurial nutter leading them, and they kind of wander around doing different bits and pieces, and you know, very similar actually in a way, the two bands. Um, but yeah, so they started off their debut release. This is back in the day. This is great. Their debut release was a split flexi disc with Loop in 1988, which was given away with the Sowing Seeds fanzine. And they used to have to put coins on it in case it slipped on your record player. Brilliant. Really cheap shit. Flexi,
Cutting
let's
edge
say. Oh,
technology.
yeah. They followed their debut single, Kick the Wall. And at the time, the band consisted of Stephen Laurie, vocals, guitar, David Fitzgerald, lead guitar, Joanna Doran, rhythm guitar, French horn. This is for the album, obviously. Um, Bert Brooks, bass guitar, Dominic Dillon, drums, and also featuring Rose Emery, piano, and Julian Overton, violin. So the debut album, Taste, I do have a copy here, was released in 1989, and from it, The Perfect Needle, that's the 12-inch there, was
Hmm.
probably their most famous song. So this is the debut album, very similar in terms of graphic design.
Hmm.
Interesting enough, I got this when it came out, couldn't get on with it, just gave it away to someone. Just thought you can have it. And it took about 10 years before I actually got back into it because it's not just shoegazy. There's some noise rock in there as well. And there's other stuff, and
Yeah.
it's weird because I really enjoyed Sonic Youth at the time. It was just as noisy, but that just didn't click. But this song did. Um, so yeah, Pitchfork named the album the 47th best shoegaze album of all time. Are there 47 shoegaze albums? There probably are now, but yeah. And they said it's a varied sampler of the eventual staples of shoegaze, zonked out space rock, drone-laced rhythms, gossamer drums. The divergence from the eventual genre lies in Laurie's vocals, which don't so much swoon as sock you in the stomach, especially on the lysergic threadbare. Yeah, he's a bit more forthright on that one.
Mhm.
Yeah, so there's not a lot actually about this band, so we'll get into the lyrics and then you'll get a bit more of an idea afterwards about him. So, Cerise, Release, and so much more. With perfect needle hits the floor. I will be breathing, will you? Velvet warms all over here, velvet warms all over here. Lay down in painless falling now. And it hurts too much to be where you are, hurts too much to be where you are. I've got the perfect needle, I've got the perfect needle for you. Surrender down comes everything. Breathes no more and falls to sleep. Blind and helpless, sick and dead. Treasure waits complete and there with scattered needles everywhere, thorn at the end of every road, thorn at the end of every road. And it hurts too much to be where you are, hurts too much to be where you are. I've got the perfect needle. I've got the perfect needle for you. Hurts too much to be where you are. Hurts too much to be where you are. There's the little silos in between. I've got the perfect needle. I've got the perfect needle for you. So yeah, heroin.
Yeah,
Um,
let's get in there.
so just to give you a little glimpse, and I won't do the whole thing, but his character. When the Sun Hits blog website published an interview with Stephen Laurie in January 2011. So I read out and I think what they did is they bunged together a load of very sort of fan-like questions, sent off to him, and he filled them out, sent it back. So, question: how were the telescopes formed, and how did the band choose that particular name? And he replied, "I took the inspiration to send me away. It's infectious. I chose the name for its meaning, beyond the realm of natural vision." There you go. Do you feel your early sound changed at all once the telescopes moved to Creation Records? Was there pressure to be shoegaze under that label? How did you like working with Creation? And he replied, telescopes are in constant flux. Everyone has their own idea of how telescopes should be. I liked working with Creation sideways. Question. I've always felt that Telescope's experimental use of noise and feedback in their songs is exceptionally above the rest of the pack on both past and more recent Telescope releases. Can you talk a little bit about your interest in exploring these sorts of soundscapes and why they're important to you? His reply, it's the most natural form of expression for me. Songs are written, even when they seem to fall from nowhere, but I think and dream in noise. Question: what bands or artists most influenced you in your youth and had a significant impact on your own sound, if any? And he's replied, everything, nothing, and the Velvet Underground. It was a brilliant
That's
question. What do
great.
you think of modern psychedelia stroke shoegaze stroke Britpop artists? Any favourites? And he's replied, the Brighton Jonestown Massacre's new album is sounding pretty special, which probably means it sounds just like mine. I'm, I'm not entirely sure how to place a lot of the things I enjoy hearing. Um, Question: if you had to choose one Telescopes track that was the ultimate definition of your sound, which would it be and why? And his reply: I would have to take the forfeit. And then last question: what is your philosophy on life, if any, that you live by? And he's replied, hashtag. So that gives a little insight into him. Uh, much like
Interesting
Anton.
character.
Yeah, much like Anton from Brian Jonestown as well.
Yeah.
So continue the story, and this is edited highlights because there's a lot. Second self-titled album, Telescopes in '92, was a contrast to that noise rock and offered a much more laid-back sound. The band sort of scraped the lower reaches of the UK singles charts with the single Flying, which I remember was pounded around everywhere. I thought it was really disappointing. And Laura explained the change of direction. He said, your idea of perfection changes as you move on. I think we still hold the same approach to our music now. We still try just as many mad ideas. It's just a lot more subtle and works to a different end. And so the changes continued in personnel, in record labels. They went through a few of them, and also in their overall sound. So again, edited highlights. In 2005, they were a much more experimental band. They specialized in electronic soundscapes. In 2011, the band were invited by Portishead to perform at the ATP RB Mirror at Alexandra Palace in London, where they performed songs from their debut album. In 2012, they released a single that was a drone version of Nick Drake's Black Eyed Dog. More on that later. Um, and they followed up with the album Harm in 2013, which again was drone experimentation. 2015, the Hidden Fields album was released, described by AllMusic as shoegaze and noise pop, but more song based than recent releases, which is was in context the others were probably a bit difficult to listen to. Um, Exploding Head Syndrome was released in 2019. Blurt magazine wrote, "If you find beauty in churning guitars, a groggy organ, and Laurie's half mumbled lyrics (brackets like I do), then you'll find Exploding Head Syndrome to be the Racker Welsh of the year." So they liked it. All in all, the band has released 16 studio albums, 7 live albums across various labels. The latest being the album Editions and the album Hello Moon, both released in 2024. Um, and the Telescopes have been described by the British music press as, quotes, more a revolution of the psyche than a revolution of the sidewalk, which is a catchy little phrase, isn't it?
Yeah.
And they say it's constant throughout a body of work spanning over 30 years. So, yeah, kind of unsung heroes in a way. Um, Not all their stuff's great, but some bits are. And I really like this one. And it's that sort of very thick, sort of shoegazy noise, which I absolutely adored at the age of 19 as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ears ringing for 3 days, all that sort of shit. Yeah.
Yeah, fair, fair. It's interesting to hear and again kind of canvas the idea of the evolution of any subgenre of
Yeah.
music, rock and roll. It, I guess where I tend to gravitate when it comes to shoegaze is when sort of on the shoegaze evolutionary line or chart is when it starts to commingle a bit with art rock and post rock sounds, and they all
A bit of
kind of
dream pop as well, yeah.
yeah, and it takes on more than just this idea of loud sound, loud affected a sound that's just persistent and then changes to a slightly different version of that and then shifts back to the original and then there's your song. It's hard to digest when it's just one, like if you just grab one big hunk of steak and throw it in your gob and then try to, chew through that. That's kind of what these verses were like for me. I will go back and give it a listen. And to be fair, it's a very earlier version of a a sound that would become, I don't want to say perfected because that's not fair, and clearly my bias leaks into that when I say that, but like
Developed.
it gets cleaned up a bit. Like I could hear I hear hum in that verse, but hum's drumming is more is clearer to hear in their production. Even the voice, even though it is that same kind of like meek approach during the verses, is still clearer and easier to discern than this, which just sounds like it's got thicker layers piled on top of it. And so I see it, I appreciate it. The context that you have has helped me kind of bring that into focus, but still, it's like one of those things where am I going to like the iPhone 1 better than the iPhone 16? I doubt it. But there are people who like original Coke way better than that bullshit they tried to push for a couple years before they went back to the regular Coke recipe. So there's different anecdotes that can apply to how you enjoy things, whether it's the original or the newer, more recent version of it. And it's kind of like a to each their own, I suppose. And regardless, you can't argue that this isn't integral to what would be the sound that you prefer if you don't prefer the sound. You still can't ignore the importance that this had on the sounds that you might gravitate more toward that came out later because of it. You know what I mean? So there has to be a rooted appreciation just there alone.
Yeah, I mean, there's always, no, I say always, there has before this been pioneers of this brutalist sound. I think of like Sister A and Velvet Underground, which I adore as well. Lou Reed's horrible, using the old machine, stuff like that. But again, context in terms of as a young man, 18, 19, prior to this, I mean, there was college rock, REM, etc. Um, the Smiths and the indie stuff. It was all fairly light and not that heavy. So
Yeah,
the only heavy stuff was hair metal. And he had like synth pop as well, which was fairly. And then suddenly, you're at college and you go out to have a few shandies, whatever, and there's a band playing this like at in 110 decibels, and you think this is the most exciting thing you've heard ever
yeah, 'cause it's
because you
so
haven't
much
heard it.
different. Yeah, yeah,
Exactly. So that's where my sort of love of this sort of comes from.
yeah,
And you're right. It's the least sophisticated of the shoegaze stuff I've given you because I guess it's early. And
yeah,
I could be generous and say that his disaffected vocals in the chorus of in the verse of effect to sort of like show us some, a druggie or whatever. But no, it is. It's just the way he sings. So
yeah,
I mean, it's not getting into character. He's just pretty weak,
yeah, yeah.
But
Well, to his
that's
credit,
what.
the choruses he delivered with a little bit of that, like I
Yeah,
could hear his pain in that, you
yeah,
know what I mean, or his conviction. In the verses, just sounded like a kid that didn't want
yeah,
to look at dad in the eye after he broke a rule or something like that. You know, he's
yeah.
trying to
Well,
explain himself.
it clearly took a lot out of him. They had to rest during the verse again.
Yeah, exactly. That's great.
Brilliant. Okay, I shall wrap things up. Thanks for listening, Sunday.
Thank you.
Folks out there, tell us what you think. Please hit the like button if you like this and drop your comments about Telescopes, this track, this album. Um, does it have taste? Um, you let us know. Be really interested to see if there's anyone else who likes them. But yeah, it is considered a bit of a classic amongst certain people. But there you go. So yeah, really, really interested to see what you guys think. Um, if you haven't subscribed already, please do. Um, or the puppy gets it. Um, that said, we really appreciate everybody who does support the channel. Moving on up, the smalls. Um, thanks so much for watching. And we will see all of you in the next episode of the Audio Files.
See you later, guys.